A living legend. When I first started way back when in 2004, he was already there, he was already established, he was one of the big boys. Himself and Christopher, they were the captains, the titans of public speaking. And we was in the club for 10 years, 12 years, how long? 2003 till?
2004 till 2012.
2012, so that's how many years that is? 8, something like that. So, but not only was he a speaker, he was a contest speaker. He was not just a contest speaker, he was a winning contest speaker. He was not just winning an area, division, district. This man went on to represent our club, our district in America. Woo! If I remember correctly, I believe that Martin is the only one from our club to have gone to the US and to represent us in the speaking contest over there. An achievement that has not yet been repeated. Ranjit, Michaela, yet? Okay. So, big round of applause for Martin for his fantastic achievements. Okay? A few years ago, 2012 I believe it was, you moved to Frankfurt.
I did.
You moved to Frankfurt. It was a win for Frankfurt, a loss for Munich. No. But we have him back here today. He's going to give us a tall tale. Your title is?
Martin Brown is a little weed.
Martin Brown is a little weed. Give it up for Martin Brown!
Thank you for that very warm introduction, Mel. Now then, boys and girls, are you all sitting comfortably? Yeah. Good. Then I'll begin. Because tonight's story begins, like all good stories should, with once upon a time in a land far, far away. There we meet our hero, just a young boy, growing up in the heart of the English countryside, in a tiny house with an enormous garden. And though it's well over 50 years ago now, this little boy remembers that garden like it was yesterday. Because it was the most beautiful place I think I've ever known. It was truly beautiful. It had a lawn that stretched out like an emerald ocean to a far horizon. There were apple trees, pear trees, plum trees, hundreds of rose bushes of every variety, and thousands of flowers covering every hue of the rainbow, turning their heads to the afternoon sky, or glistening like jewels in an early morning mist. Now, given such a description, you could be fooled into thinking this was paradise, a veritable Eden on earth. But you'd be wrong. This was hell on earth, a place of blood, sweat, and tears. Have you any idea how many hours of hard labor it takes to get a garden to look that good? How much bullshit, manure, it takes to get roses to smell so sweet? And wherever you have rose bushes and flower beds, of course, you get the gardener's enemy, the great intruder, the weeds, thistles, chalk burr, dandelions, and 100 other varieties trying to make their way into that perfect vista. Now, my mother was the chief gardener in our family, and she appointed me, mainly because I was small and skinny, to get to war with the weeds. Because I was perfect to get into the flower beds and between the prickly thorn bushes. And it was a job I relished, because I got to pull them up, I got to dig them up, and I got to chop them up. And one time, I even blew blew them up. But that's a story for another time. Now, as chance would have it, one misty morning, I was at the bottom of the garden in a far corner, and what did I see? But a spindly little green weed. Safe to say, no weed was safe from me, and so I stepped in, and I pulled that weed up, threw it over my shoulder, and marched on back down the garden, not even giving it a second thought. Until, about a month later, there I was, in that same far corner. And so was the weed. It was back. And it looked a little bigger. But not to worry. This time, I dug it up. It wasn't ever coming back now. It was done for. Then we had the school holidays and I was away for many weeks. But fate has a strange way of playing its hand. And there I stood in that far corner. And so did the weed. It was back. And it was definitely bigger and maybe a little bushier this time. I wasn't sure. But not to worry. This time, I pulled it up. I dug it up. I chopped it up. And I even put some weed killer down. It wasn't coming back this time. And I walked away without another thought. Until, you guessed it, there I was, in that far corner. And so was the weed. And it was definitely bigger and bushier this time. This begged careful thought and planning, so I backed away. But the next morning, there I stood, festooned with every weapon known to modern gardening. I was the Weedinator. Hasta la vista, baby. And down I marched the garden, a spring in my step, a glint in my eyes, until I reached that far corner. And I stopped dead in my tracks. Because I knew I would never hurt that little weed ever again. Because not only was it back, not only was it now a lot bigger, not only was it a lot bushier, but it was covered in the most magnificent pink flowers you have ever seen. I turned around and walked away, knowing that I'd been taught an important lesson. A lesson that's helped me, and perhaps you, so much in my life. See, that little weed took everything I could throw at it, but it kept coming back. It didn't just survive, it thrived. And now, whenever life comes along and tries to pull me up, dig me up, chop me up, I say, Martin, you're a little weed. Don't survive. Thrive.
So, for some of you who haven't seen Martin speak before, you can see why and how he was a contest winner at the highest levels. So now, we move on to our next section, which is just the last little bit before the break. Michaela, you ready?